Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Spark. My name's David Udelf, and we're getting some reverb here.
Reverb, good for music, not so good for crowdcast.
No. I don't know why that's happening. But anyway, can everybody hear me?
I think it's good now.
Sorry about that, everybody. But welcome to tonight's episode of Spark. My name's Dr. David Udelf, one of your co-hosts. I am a psychologist in Cleveland, Ohio, and we hope to inspire you tonight. You're in for a really great evening. I'm going to turn things over now to Peter Lawson Jones, my co-host, who will introduce our special guest for tonight's show.
Thank you, Dave. And for those of you who don't already know this, Dave and I are high school classmates, Shaker Heights class of 2011, right, Dave? I think that's what it was?
Right? Yeah, 2011.
That's our story. And that's not BC. That's 2011 AD. Hey, we're so happy that you are joining us for our third episode of Spark, inspirational conversations that will ignite your success. As Dave said, I'm Peter Lawson Jones, former elected official, lawyer, consultant, actor, and playwright. But enough about Dave and me, because we have an extraordinary guest this evening, a longtime friend of both of ours. And how would we describe him? Well, he is an award-winning chef. He is an entrepreneur. He is a college hockey official, referee. But most importantly, he's one of our more celebrated humanitarians. And that's why we're just so pleased to have with us today Cleveland's own Brian Chrostowski. Brandon I'm so worried about pronouncing your last name, which is a lot more difficult than Jones.
So, his name is Brandon, and you graduated in 1971, not 2011.
So, Brandon, welcome to Spark. Thanks for taking our time, because we know you, up until the last few minutes, you were working at the restaurant. Why don't we kick it off? Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, your family, some of those details before we get into the nitty-gritty of all of your extraordinary and numerous endeavors.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for having me on, David. Thanks for having me on, Peter. It's a pleasure. Well, I mean, a little bit about myself, born and raised Detroit, Michigan. Family, I suppose, your average family. Single mom for a long time, raised us 3 boys. So we had a lot of fun growing up, right? And, I don't have much to say about my childhood. It was great, dude. You're a kid. You don't know what you don't know. And just liked to get out there, man. Like to have fun, maybe a little bit too much fun. Barely squeaked by high school, but I made it nonetheless. And, here we are today talking.
And while you were in high school, some of your activities, some of your athletic and other interests?
Yeah. I mean, I was always into sports. Always into sports. So I played baseball, basketball was probably the main sport. Anytime there's a pickup game, you could find me there. So I'd say there wasn't no fabulous, professional career in the sporting arena, but always out there on the court, man, always out there on the diamond, doing something, but always having fun. And pretty straightforward, Peter.
Okay. And I can attest to the fact. I can attest to the fact that he still has a good jump shot, because I saw it up close and personal when we were just shooting some hoops on July 4th last year. So he still has game, and a pretty good volleyball player as well. But on to the important things. Tell us now. You're known for your Edwins Empire, and I say empire in this context in a very positive way. I mean, there's Edwins Restaurant, there's Edwins 2, there's Edwins Leadership and Restaurant Institute. And of course, there's Edwins, a Life Skills Center campus. Tell us how you went about building. I think you started with the restaurant, but tell us how you built this wonderful collection of businesses and industries.
Yeah, for sure. For me, this is, I like to tell people it's this like 10-year overnight success, right? There was an idea in 2004 that I wanted to bring to reality. And, I was in New York City at the time, thought this through. I wanted to come to Cleveland. Cleveland had the most distressed city at that time, the worst high school graduation rate. And I had a feeling that if there was a need, that's where the need was. And just worked tirelessly and try to build and construct a plan. Eventually moved here to Cleveland in 2008 and, started working here and slowly putting brick by brick together the foundation for what you see today at Edwins. So it's really not fair to say, hey, open this restaurant and all this stuff happened. What a miracle, right? It was easy. It was long, man. It was long and hard. It was never done in this country. It was the first of its kind and still, the benchmark for social enterprise and helping men and women coming home and out of prison. So what do? We have the program started in Grafton Prison. Okay, that's where I started teaching inside Grafton Correctional Camp. The class of 25 inmates, we still hold that class today where we go in for 8 months a year on Saturdays, teach fine dining basics from the fundamentals of sauces to you name it, right? We get down. That's been going on now for 10 years. The restaurant that most people know is here in Shaker Square, right? That opened 2013. It's fine dining French restaurant. That's also where the 6-month program takes place for men and women coming out of the criminal justice system or affected by it. Okay, this is like the flagship, the crown jewel. From there, the immediate need I saw in that first couple months was housing. So just set out to build housing for students in our program, which is now I started with one building. Now we've got 5 buildings on campus, right? So the idea was to continue to dig deep, fight, cut off any sort of barrier that exists between someone's success and where they're at today. So housing was a big piece of that. Then it was the campus where we have a library and a fitness center, a small store where it's things are free, like suits and clothes and shoes, you name it. But there's also a full court basketball court. We have a small farm. We have a garden, a kids park. And then we expanded with family housing. Then we had the butcher shop and bakery right there. So it's a very big part of the block that we occupy on Buckeye and Southmoreland, right 2 blocks away from Shaker Square. We also have Edwins 2, which is where I'm at right now. We just finished up a Burgundy wine and cheese tasting. Sold it out, man. Good time. I was cutting cheese as you were calling me, Peter. I'm sorry I was a little behind, but we got it right in when we needed to. And then we've got also a lot of prison presence across the country with our tablets. There's a tablet that's provided by a communication company. We provide the video content, the tests, the quizzes, the curriculum. Inmates are taking that as we speak, and then the Cleveland Browns pay for transportation if you finish that program anywhere in the U.S. So you can start now incarcerated, dreaming, practicing, seeing videos, release. Come here with on the Browns dime, stay in free housing, get paid to go to school, and start to transform your life the way you wanted to do it.
Could you talk a little bit, Brandon, about the concept of what you're doing, so people understand that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. The idea is to help men and women who have been affected by the criminal justice system or in the criminal justice system, right? So we'll receive you where you're at. We train you for 6 months. You work every position. So dining room, kitchen, you get business basics, you name it, man. From nose to toes, we're making sure that you understand the industry that you're in. You're able to excel at it. You are, you're getting the same elite skills you would at the Culinary Institute of America, where I went in New York. But of course, you're getting paid to go through it instead of paying to go through it. We provide a lot of social services as well, man. So we have a case manager on site. If you're having issues with anything in life, and David, this, if they need to talk to someone here on a professional level, we have volunteers who we work with. If you need a driver's license reinstated, we're going to work towards that. Custody of your kids, we're going to help you with that. The idea is to battle all these other barriers so that someone's got a pathway moving forward. Now, the truth is, if you don't want to work, this program is not going to work for you, right? You got to still want to do it. It's not a handout. It's definitely a hand right there, and that's what we do.
And I know you have certain metrics by which you measure the success of your endeavors. What percentage of the men and women who complete the program are placed in jobs? And do you look at recidivism rates as well? Just, because, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who have minds like accountants. And so they want to know the numbers, the statistics. If you're batting 300 or 250, tell us a little bit about the metrics you use and what it's shown in terms of the success of all of your efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. So job placements. I mean, when you graduate the program, you're gonna 95% of the time someone finds himself in employment the next 30 days, right? So it's not hard. I mean, it's really not hard to find a job, but we're more focused on find the next best step to complete your career, right? So that's very important. It's about finding where someone's arc is, where they want to go, and where they're at, and what's the next best thing. But yeah, 95% you can distill that down. Recidivism of our graduates, which is nearly 600, is less than 1%. Nationwide, you're probably hovering around 40 to 60%. Depending on how far out you look. But we're definitely hitting well below that average, which is a good thing in this case. And has really become, like I said, the gold standard in the country.
I think Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable that you built this thing from scratch. I remember talking to you at the restaurant that you were at the time, Zach Bruel's restaurant, about getting this thing started. And it is just so unbelievable. If you could talk about it, how did the dream, it had to start as a dream. And how do you build that? How did you build on that? It's an amazing story.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you got to be a bit stubborn, right? You got to be able to see something that is possible, and just understand that it just takes time to construct. So maybe there's a little bit of patience in there. But I mean, I'm a terribly impatient person. But just like an unwillingness to stop and to get it done. That's really, truly what it takes. Like anything else in life, this is no different than anyone else's hard work and dream, right? It's just, this one took a long time. I mean, it affected me because I've been in the criminal justice system. I had probation instead of hard time, and I met a chef who was able to mentor me at a young age and taught me it's the right way to do something. And it's not practice that makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. And he beat the fundamentals into me, the techniques and all these sort of things at a young age. I mean, I was 19 years old running kitchens. I mean, in a good kitchen, not just like some kitchen that you just throw food out. It's like, with some good food, great techniques. And, I got out of that city of Detroit. I got a great education at the Culinary Institute of America. I worked under Charlie Trotter. I worked in Michelin 3-star in Paris. I've worked in southern France. I worked in New York City. But along that journey, I would get the calls from back home of people that I grew up with or in the kitchen with being murdered, put in prison, either loss of freedom or loss of life altogether. And I just thought there was something I could do given the fact I was here and someone else wasn't. But there was a way to change that, right? Because I knew it would work, David. It wasn't hard. It wasn't like impossible because it worked for me. It was a story of my life. I knew it could work. I just had to build it. And that's where the hard work comes in. But if could just change that one life, that maybe of someone you lost that was close, that's enough burn to keep you year after year, day after day, until it gets accomplished.
I understand one of your favorite expressions and saying is that every human being, regardless of their past, has the right to a fair and equal future.
Yeah.
I guess that feedback. I guess that's obviously the philosophical basis of what you do, your day-to-day work. When you reflect on your own story, because yours is a story of, to some extent, of redemption, of a second chance, having been placed on probation instead of getting hard time. But what was it, do you think, in Brandon Chrostowski that made the difference in you grasping that opportunity that the chef that you met offered you? And how do you take what you learned, what you did personally, and try to infuse that into the 600 graduates and the others that you've interfaced with to try to give them that second chance, that second opportunity, and to make sure they seize it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, a complex one, but this is just about staying grounded. I think is the best way to describe or answer your question, is how you presented it. It's just staying grounded, and not being out of touch. It's not trying to get out of any place that I came from. I'm content in that place, and I'm content with the perspective of that place, and I don't want to lose that place. Right, that is who I am. It's part of me, and I really think what got me was this chef. He believed in me, right? But there was also some fate involved. I mean, who's to say I was going to walk in that kitchen that day? He was there. It could have been one of a million doors I walked through. It happened to be his, and this is what happened. So the way he took to me and the way I took to the kitchen, it was just it was meant to be, right? It was just meant to be. But you stay grounded. You can connect with people. I can certainly resonate where someone's coming from. Because I've been there before, I'm still there today, right? I mean, we're all struggling each day. I'm not trying to buy my way out of it with nice clothes or a car. I just, simple folk, really, right? I want to raise a good family and just stay grounded. And that's the key to this all, right? We don't have television at home. I haven't had TV probably since the early 2000, 2001. I just don't believe in suppressing emotions or blurring what's the reality of things are. When COVID hit, man, head down, buckled through it. We doubled business. I saw with my eyes. I wasn't listening to the media, didn't surrender to fear, just knew that we had to keep people employed. And, a lot of us have families to support, and there's a community to feed. When you just stay connected and not listening to all the things that can blur your instincts, you're generally going to find a way to, way to pass on something, knowledge, or it's all about connectivity. So to stay connected, you got to stay grounded. Stay grounded. You can't be blurred.
And you didn't allow those obstacles like over the pandemic to get in your way. You just plowed through that. Right?
Yeah, I would say so for sure, David. Nothing changed during the pandemic except the world around us. I've always been a survivor. What we do, we're surrounded by survivors. We're just trying to make life happen. And I think the best thing about it is we just knew what we were fighting for. So an obstacle didn't seem like an obstacle; it just seemed like the only pathway. So you just go through it. And I think hard work wins, man. No matter what, you can outwork something or somebody, and you can get through it.
Was there any one thing that chef said to you when you were having your struggles that just stuck with you, that maybe lit your fire? Something that he did, something that he said?
I don't think it was any one thing. I just think generally someone willing to accept you for who you are, and offer a pathway to a better place. Whatever that place is different for all of us. I think that's what he did most, man, just his energy of allowing that to happen and flourish. It didn't come without working hard or, taking shots from people or this or that. But, it's he gave me that shot. He gave me that shot to shoot.
I thought maybe there's that one thing that just for whatever reason just kind of clicks, but that's okay.
The other day when the three of us were chatting, just in preparation for today, we remarked how Zach Brule, who also was in the high school class with David and me, and how when we knew him back in high school, there was no evidence whatsoever that he would go on to become a great chef and restaurateur. That would have been the last thing we would have. I'm curious, did you ever have any even instincts or interest in the culinary arts before you encountered the chef who really made such a difference in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I could say so. I mean, just being around, a mother who's always cooking, right? And then a grandmother who was always in the kitchen, right? I mean, food's in you somehow, some way. It's in you, and maybe it started coming out as, I mean, one of my first jobs was waiting tables. Then another place, an Italian restaurant. I mean, I was always around that sort of energy and vibe. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was nothing that like stood out. And this career, like many others, there's maybe one savant in the world ever, right? I mean, it's not like that. You just got to hang with the game. You got to hang with the game. You got to work around the best to be the best. You got to put yourself on that level and continue on that level. And that's where the rubber hit the road. It wasn't something in my youth that said, "Hey, I love it." It's just kind of I felt at home when I was in the kitchen and worked hard to hang with the best.
Well, let me ask you, if you had walked in the door and it was of a movie studio, do you think you would have become a great director and producer of film? I'm just interested.
I don't know, maybe.
With a little bit this feedback. Now you've traveled extensively and lived extensively throughout the United States and in France. Tell us about your experience when you were in Paris. I mean, which is kind of viewed as the epicenter for the culinary arts and for sophistication and culture. What was that experience, and how long were you in France, honing your craft?
Yeah, good question. So I was in France for under a year. I got to tour. I started in central France, where at a Michelin 2-star under a chef named Jean Bardot, who was a fantastic chef, a totally crooked chef though, man. He was a funny guy. The guy would put, he'd take a bottle of Chateau Petrus or Margaux, and he'd put different wine, and say it was Petrus or Margaux, and he would sell it. He got caught, dude. They take a star away. He'd get the star back. He got caught. They take a star away. He'd give it back. I mean, it was just a game he played. But he was a pioneer in the 80s. He was the first to really infuse Asian cuisine along with the French cuisine. The prime minister took good taking of this. He was famous, man, and his name is gold. But I got to work with him, and that's where I started. And then I started writing letters to all over the Michelin 3 stars in France, And 3 of them said yes to accept me, one of which was in Paris. It happened to be the longest standing Michelin 3-star in Paris. It was a great time, man. I mean, what I learned, I learned probably the most important lesson: hard work doesn't have a language. It didn't look at who you are, gender, ethnicity, religion, anything. Just hard work is hard work, and it's universally understood. And I'm a hard worker, man. I mean, I'm a dog. I get in these kitchens and I just work, and there's no throttle on my work level. So it was accepted very, very quickly. I'm a hard worker. Okay, attitude maybe not the best. Has a little chip on my shoulder, but the kitchen will work that out of you over time. But it was a great time. I can't complain. They weren't too kind to Americans. I didn't have a lot of money. It's like one of these things I tell people. They say, I want to work in France. I want to do this. I say, just, imagine just going to a store and not being able to afford a chocolate bar, when you don't have anything. Like, you have to understand, it's the best thing because you just boil yourself down to cooking and your body, and you absorb all these little nuances. And it's a bad thing because you want the chocolate bar, right? It's not an easy place to be. So it was a good time, man. Good travels. I got no complaints, and it certainly projected my career or propelled it in a great direction.
It sounds like this Jean Bardot would have had 3, 4, 5 stars if he could keep from losing them because of his shenanigans.
Dude, he was always in that kitchen with a cigar. He was always hanging out in that kitchen with a cigar in his mouth. He'd take the cigar out, he'd taste the sauce, and guy had the best palate I've ever met. He was just a funny guy, man. He was a funny guy.
Is he still around?
Jean is. Yeah, I had asked him a while ago to come out to Cleveland, be a guest chef. It didn't work out because I think scheduling arrangements, but he was alive and well. His family's doing well. I think his daughter or his son-in-law opened a restaurant in the same town tour. But yeah, good people.
And talking about, you just mentioned his family. Talk a little bit about your own family. You're married and have children. Share a little bit about them, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, we're married, 3 kids, man, 7, 5, and 1. So we are we're staying busy to say the least, man. Family's great, dude. They're all athletic. They all get in the kitchen. They'll work. Not for a long time, but I make sure that you have. As of 2 years ago, the kids would be able to come in the kitchen. They'll garnish plates. Maybe they'll put some snails in the pan. They'll polish glassware. So they're around the game. They understand the dynamics of working hard. That's very important. But most of all, dude, we just enjoy each other when we have that time, because time is scarce, man. You know how it is.
You have a way of finding time where there isn't any time. I mean, you're unbelievable. We have a question from the audience that I want to pass by. Is how did the restaurant get its name, Edwins?
I know.
Easy. So it's my middle name, right? So for the longest time when I was a child, I was 16, 17, I wanted a restaurant called Edwins because I started working in a restaurant, whether it was serving or whatnot. And as time grew and I still wanted that restaurant, this concept came to mind. And I just said, if I capitalize it and use it as a mantra, education wins, I've got the best of all worlds, man. I've got the mind, I've got the soul. And that's how it all came about.
And as if you haven't contributed enough to humanity and to the downtrodden, talk about your recent trip to Poland.
Sure. The trip, sad but good is the best way to describe it. People ask me, how was it? Sad to see you can imagine a Costco filled with women and children. The sheer proportion, that was just one. I was in 3 different towns. The sheer proportion of people who were in need, especially of women and children, it was incredible.
And they were Ukrainian.
That's what I did.
Ukrainian refugees, correct?
Yeah. So cooking there was easy to do. Just the emotions of seeing all the other things wasn't the best. I also worked with the Ukraine World Congress. Got to know a lot of things happening there and around. So yeah, it was a good trip, David. It was a good trip, but just sad to see these sort of things on that scale, man. I mean, the strongest man or woman would come through the door, and just a couple steps you'd start to cry because it's just so much.
Can't imagine.
You wrote a wonderful op-ed piece working with Ukrainian refugees that was absolutely inspirational. And it's, we need to make sure that in the rush of the latest flavor of the month that we never take our eyes away from some of the carnage that's taking place across the world in Ukraine and in other spots where there's war, where there's famine, that is really just destroying human life and altering it in a way that's anything but positive. So when I introduced you earlier as humanitarian, I was thinking both about your experience in Poland and going off on that trip, as busy as you are with an empire to run, so to speak, but certainly also about the mission of Edwins. And I love that education wins, and using your middle name in that kind of way. It's interesting, as busy as you are, and this is kind of interesting because you played baseball and basketball in high school. You still play in a over 30 league baseball team when time permits. How did you find your way to hockey? And doesn't your son play hockey? How does a basketball player end up on the ice?
Dude, it's Detroit in me, man. I mean, like you grew up on skates. it's one of those things in Detroit. It's in the blood. It's in the city. You gotta respect it. You gotta love it. When I was younger, we couldn't afford a whole lot, right? So hockey wasn't something that was natural because of the time and because of the money. But I loved it. I just loved it. And seeing the Red Wings win all those Stanley Cups, just being a overall athlete and sports fan, it was always in me. So I was 39. I was going on 40, and I decided to say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna start officiating hockey. Right? I know how to skate, not very well, but I'll get better. I just started doing it, man, and then within a year or two, I jumped 2 levels of officiating, and then it's enough to be able to do Division I college hockey. So. I mean, to me, it's my yoga, right? Everyone's got to have a release. I don't do a whole lot of games, maybe 3 games, 4 games, 5 at most a week. I'll try to do it on off hours or in afternoons and the weekends in between the busyness of the restaurant. But dude, it's a blast, man. You get out there, you got to be focused, you got to be locked in. Physically, you're moving the whole time. And the higher level they get, man, you better be able to skate because they're gonna maul you. So it's it's a blast, man. It's a blast.
Brandon, just so you know, a guy that is in the waiting in the wings to be coaching the Detroit Red Wings is a guy from Shaker Heights who, by the name of Ben Simon. He grew up in Shaker and played hockey there, played in the NHL, and he was their interim coach for a couple of games this past season. So we got a real connection here from Cleveland and Detroit, and it's all tied together. There you go.
Yeah, so Will Simon, his brother, is the guy who was the referee for the game I lined for at the college level. And yeah, his brother actually coached the Red Wings. I think he's the only undefeated coach in the NHL history because he coached 1 game and he won. Right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I coached both of those guys when they were kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. There's a lot of things happening in a hockey game. Pucks are flying, sticks are being thrown about. I assume you've been fortunate and never been hit by an errant puck or stick yet.
Well, yeah, it happens. I mean, I don't know. You just keep moving.
Oh, Brandon, I got to ask, you do everything, okay?
Yeah.
There's got to be something that you haven't tried yet or haven't done that's on your list of something you want. Is there anything like that you haven't done yet that you're wanting to give a shot at?
Yeah, so bull riding. Bull riding, man. And my wife, she knows a cowboy out in Geauga County who trains bulls. So, I mean, I can get on one. I just got to find the time to get out there and step on it. She said the guy would only let me sit in it while it's in the rack. You know what I mean? But I want to at least go a little bit with this bull.
Well, we're going to do a live broadcast with that. We got to be out there for that one.
Peter,
but at a safe distance.
Peter, you got to let me wear the hat, man.
You want to wear the hat while you go on the bull? You got it.
It might be the last hat. It may be the last hat you ever put on.
Yeah. But it's something about the beast, man. It's a big animal. That thing's moving hard, and just to see what the human body can do as a part of this competition or connection would be kind of interesting, man. I'm still up for it. My wife, she says, I don't think you should do it.
I had the opportunity to go watch a bullfight once, and being the matador just that's such a romantic figure, the matador. So that kind of intrigued me. And I thought about the running of bulls. That seemed a little bit interesting, but riding a bull riding, that would probably be my third choice as regards a bull.
I would have to line up with your wife, Brandon, on that and advise you, find something, maybe how about riding a German Shepherd or something like that? Maybe a little safer.
And I'm sure your wife wants to make sure your insurance is paid up. before you take a flyer on a bull. She's got 3 kids to raise, Brandon.
Dude. Hey, it's like riding a bull, those kids.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Good point. You know, Dave was referencing this earlier. You managed to pack in more in 24 hours than most people. And I guess, you know, I know one of the things you like to say is, hey, just make it happen. And that's obviously a mantra that served you well throughout your whole life. You know, they recommend that adults get 7 to 9 hours sleep. I can't imagine that you're in that anywhere near that.
I think that's subjective.
Say that again. Got a little reverb.
Yeah, I think it's a subjective comment. It's got to be case by case.
Well, how much do you sleep every night?
I get it in, man. I get a good 5-6 hours. I don't think that I'm lacking 5-6 hours. That seems to be working all right. Again, I mean, you got to think about a couple things. You know, I'm really big into health, nutrition, and how your body's processing oxygen. How much of your breath are you actually taking in? How are your cells recharged? So health, fitness, and then like those things on the edge, whether it's like cryo freeze, ozone therapies, all this kind of stuff works. And it's not definitely quantity. I think it's more quality. And so you may be breathing, I may be breathing, but I think that I'm getting more out of that oxygen per breath. And I think my body's processing it in a more efficient manner. And I think the same thing for sleep.
Now and one of the interesting things that you shared was that you have, in addition to, you know, being an entrepreneur, in addition to being an official officiating hockey games, in addition to being a dad and a husband, that you've also done a little bit of teaching at my alma mater at Harvard. Tell us how that came about, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so the first time around,
this could be like riding a bull as well. That's for sure.
The first time around was during the pandemic. We did some online stuff, right? That's how they teach the business school at Harvard, via case studies of people actually doing the work, right? And they take a look at these models and they analyze, they go through. It will be next week. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but I think it's like the 10th or 11th. I'll go out to Cambridge and I'll do in person. Again, just, you know, when you're like the national model for something, people take notice, and then they always want to analyze. They want to try to figure it out. Like, how does it work? What's the best practice? And all these, it's the same shit, different school kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, you know, I'll find out more about the in-person here coming up and just talk about what we do and some of the best practices and the pillars. And, you know, these academics can analyze it and process it however their minds see fit. And I'll get on a plane back to Cleveland.
What about replication? Had this model been adopted elsewhere? I mean, people don't need to reinvent the wheel. They can look and study what you did, and this should be something, with the prison population being what it is in the United States, and with the number of men and women who on a daily basis are being released from penal institutions. There ought to be programs like this in each and every community across the country. Why not? Is it the people lack it? What is it that's lacking where people aren't latching onto this model and replicating it elsewhere?
Hey, David, how many no-hitters there have been in Baseball World Series? Just Koufax?
Don Larson.
Don Larson. Yeah.
One.
So how come the pitcher's mound 60 feet 6 inches? It's never changed. The ball is still the same. The field's still relatively the same. How come there hasn't been more? It's a good idea not to let anyone hit off you.
All right, I'm waiting for Brandon's answer there. Or is that a rhetoric question about it?
It's the players in the field. You know what I mean? It's the players in the field. It's the ecosystem. There's only 127 Yankees, right? Uh, you think about all these things that go into something that's so human dependent. There's not a manufactured product here. Yes, the need to win a championship in sports is great for every city. However, only one team does it, right? So, Peter, it's not so much the need or the analytics of what makes sense and what the supply and demand or et cetera is. It's where can a team be formed that's going to have the wherewithal, the scope, the vision, the determination. You know what I mean? All these sort of things to make something like this become possible, because it's really impossible to do. And that's where it lies. We've opened this up in Medina with the recovery community. We've done one on the west side with a homeless shelter called Ohio City Pizzeria. We worked in Cincinnati. We worked in San Francisco. We've helped people take their project from here to where it needs to go. But the moment you start getting into these conversations where you have to tell somebody, listen, Peter, when you wake up today, you're going to be in fourth place, okay? Your business and your community are coming 1, 2. Your family's coming third. You're coming fourth. Okay, man? And in this culture today, nobody wants to be in fourth place. They want to be the loudest person in the room. They want to have the most money in the room. They want to have the most. It just doesn't fit a servant leader in today's culture like it would or like it should. It takes a greater equal amount of force to move an object. It's basic physics. So when you're trying to take someone's life from where it's at to where it needs to go, it takes a force. And you have to align that team. You have to align that city. Cleveland's a great city for this. They support. They come out. They do more. You have to align so many things that what makes sense on paper. If it made sense on paper, there should be more poverty, or racism should be eradicated, or hunger should be gone. Of course, it makes sense on paper, but now try doing it, right? Whole different story. So that's why although we've done it a couple times and replicated the theory of it, the impact is still yet to be replicated. I think that's just it comes down to humans, man. It comes down to humans.
Finding other Brandons. Do you have any dream of extending this nationally?
Yeah, we do it in consulting. I just got back from Santa Fe last week. We consulted there with a city and a group, and we're going to continue to work with them. Brooklyn, New York, it looks like talk today. We might have something off the ground in September. That's coming up soon. But these are all places where we'll go in, we'll help set up and guide, direct, and then slowly back out once they get their feet under them. So that's the way we do it. Having another Edwins is not the goal, right? I don't have that complex in my head. I just want to do something great, and then if something follows that, like accolades and visibility, great. If not, we are still great helping people. The one place I think there is an opportunity is with like a reentry service center, like a place where anyone coming out of prison can come to and get their basics, find their footing, be connected to job training or jobs themselves. It sounds like a no-brainer here in Cleveland, Ohio, and Cuyahoga County. We're really one of the, in front of the pack. But throughout the country, as I go places, they lack this one piece. And it's a tremendous detriment to a lot of things, especially the reentry population. The idea, visibility and education about reentry is diminished. The services for that person directly are diminished. But using our expertise, our reputation, we can certainly set up reentry service centers around the country, which are definitely expandable because it's less of a touch than a restaurant would be. But definitely a way to expand our mission.
You mentioned a couple of concepts that I'd like you to expand on. You mentioned your pillars, the pillars, and you also mentioned servant leadership. Could you talk about those two concepts? What are the pillars, and tell people a little bit about servant leadership?
Yeah, I don't think it's nothing that I've made up or should get credit for. I've heard that term before, servant leader, but essentially it's someone, putting, making sure you're leading by serving. I guess it's just flip the words around. There's your definition. It's not managing from the ivory tower or from a from an isolated place. It's being on the ground serving, and then watching that is how people follow the leader, right? That's what you do. So it's just about being sacrificial and about demonstrating that you can do it, so everyone else should be doing it. You get that, right? I don't think it's over the head, but it's easier said than done because it just requires more time, more hours, more energy. It takes a toll on the body and the mind, right? So you got to keep up with that. Yeah, so that's the best I can say. I mean, for our pillars, I mean, there's a few that I tell people that really help, bolster what we have here. And, the first being meeting people where they're at. We don't tend to look at someone where they came from or, how they present themselves. It's just like, this is who you are. Where do you want to go? And it's a strange concept for some HR departments, right? Because they want to get know everything, and I get that. But pillar number one is meet someone where they're at, take them where they want to go. Second pillar is to teach to the top. Excellence is always employable. Recessions are still selling Lamborghinis, okay? I mean, if you're great at what you do, you're going to have a job. So, and it's also fulfilling, right? I mean, I don't know who wakes up every day and says, I can't wait to be mediocre, right? I mean, it's about waking up saying I can be great. The third is making sure we show the entire perspective of the industry that we're in. If it's a different industry, you can share these practices. But, someone works every position in the restaurants. It gives them an idea of how each side is working in connection with each other, what your action causes that reaction, all the way down to that customer. You have to know how it works. It also helps our graduates who move on and work into another restaurant, and perhaps that other restaurant is just using them like another gear in the wheel, right, to make it move. And although they want the opportunity to become a sous chef or the meat cook, they're not getting that opportunity because of different circumstances. Our students know that they should move on because they know they can do that. They know if they're willing to do it, that there's a good mentor to help them do it. It just might not be at that restaurant. So showing the perspective of the industry, caring, right? It doesn't look like having to build housing and all the things that we've done, but I think it's important to know a circumstance when someone's running late doesn't mean they don't care. You might want to look at these situations a little bit more and have a dialogue about them. And I understand people got to run businesses, so do I, but I can help work with someone and get them to a better place in terms of their tardiness by examining what's wrong, like just talking, say what's going on. Well, there's all these barriers, these and it's just maybe making some small adjustments and day by day changing your approach until you get to where you want to be and where we need you to be, right? It just takes time. Meeting someone where they're at, it doesn't mean they're going to look like us, talk like us, show up like us. It's sometimes it takes time. And then last thing is getting out of the way. We want to make sure we get out of the way of people and not have them be beholden to us because we've taught you something or that's not the case. Move on, go forward. All we want you to do is be the best you can be, and then let us be your network if you need that. Okay. So those 5 pillars we take to manufacturers and other places that want to do this sort of focus and philosophy, and we found that it works.
And a lot of the pillars that you mentioned define servant leadership. There's 10 basic principles of servant leadership, and you identified some of them in those pillars. So there you go. It's interesting because you said at the beginning you're an impatient guy. However, you got to have a lot of patience to be working, people patience, to be working with the population that you're working with.
Yeah, I suppose.
I don't know if you ever thought of it that way, but you do. You just having the patience when somebody's tardy to work with them to figure out what to change. That takes patience.
And something that's interesting, David, along those lines, and I say this as a member of 2 unions, but if every employer had the same perspective and to try to figure out what was going on with an individual employee, why they were late, why they were underperforming, and gave that kind of personal attention, then we probably wouldn't have unions. because unions exist because of the friction that's traditionally been extant between, and the distance and the dissonance between the employer and the employee. The other thing that really resonated when you were talking about mediocrity, and nobody wants to be mediocre. I used to go to, whenever I'm invited to give kind of a pep talk, a career day speech at a school, I would always ask the students, how many of you here want to be mediocre, want to be average? Nobody raises their hand. But the difference between mediocrity and excellence is hard work. And it's clear, if there's any takeaway, you aren't afraid of putting in the work, whatever it requires, putting in the time, and making that kind of challenging commitment, because not everybody's willing to work. As a matter of fact, I think in today's world, working is probably the sixth most favored way to make a living after hitting the lottery, getting an inheritance, scamming somebody, but anything other than hard work. So I salute that. And if you want to, get a little bit more having a strong work ethic that will take you from obscurity and mediocrity to excellence.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, Peter, you might have cut out on that. Was it a question? I heard the statement, but there was a part that kind of cut out with the volume.
Well, and the question was, if you could just elaborate a little bit more on the absolute critical importance and ingredient of hard work and diligence and perseverance and resiliency in taking yourself from obscurity and mediocrity to excellence.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's just a way of life, and maybe it's just a burn. Okay, but I guess the end goal is, what is it all about, right? If there's not a connection to, well, why would you want to work hard if the end goal or end result wasn't anything, right? Like, what's the motivation? So I suppose, like, the anatomy of what you just said boils down to, what's the motivation? The why. What are you trying to do? And then from there, I think that you can start to build this, this environment of hard work and tenaciousness and all these other things that we associate with, what you described. But if there's no driver in this whole thing, there's no sense in working, right? If it's the end of it all is just a bag of rocks, then what's the big deal with a bag of rocks, right? But making that connection to what someone is striving to do or trying to do, I think is a secret sauce. A lot of, talks I'll give, and it's generally employers or, people struggling, and they're just not grasping this idea of why they can't find the workforce, or why they can't find, to me, it's just, if you're putting someone's life first, right, and what they're trying to do and achieve, and we do that here at Edwins with our students, right? The money is almost secondary, right? So throwing money at people like Amazon isn't working. They're turning people over. It's something alarming, man. Like 60% of their staff every couple of weeks. I think there just needs to be a hard look at where someone wants to be, developing plans and helping them get to those goals. And then as a secondary, importance, work. Okay, because that's really not what's motivating people, is the job at hand, right? Oftentimes it's where they want to go personally. Think about your hobbies. Everyone's got a hobby, and like, how much do you think about your hobby? How much do you get paid for your hobby? Right? It's usually nothing, and you're thinking about it all the time. So identifying with what's important to someone, where someone's trying to go, I think is really essential to this conversation of hard work. It's just, hard work is just, it's a dangerous word when you don't have context.
I know we're kind of reaching the end of our hour. We try to stay within an hour, but there's one question I just have to. You said earlier in the interview that you have no television in your home.
No.
And your kids haven't rebelled. Talk a little bit about that choice. That's an unusual choice, because what the average American, the average child watches, what, 4 or 5 hours of TV a day. The average adult even more. You've got 1,000 channels, reality shows, sports shows, etc. Talk a little bit about that decision that you made as a family, and what not having a TV has allowed you to do in terms of forging a relationship within the family, strengthening the family.
Yeah. It's definitely quality over quantity. It's definitely, I mean, for me, it was an easy decision. I felt like I was being suppressed when I would turn the TV on. And I'm going back to like the early 2000s, man, like 2000, 2001. And I just felt like there's a better outlet for my energy and emotion than sitting in front of a television or watching a movie or something like that. There was other things that I could be doing physically to do something that's constructive, right? I mean, it was like no brainer, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to stop watching television, and that's where it began. And a big fan of radio, you know what I mean? Like, radio is always rocking. There's some song on, playing something, right? So there's something going on. My wife, she's really big. She likes going to movies. Peter, Bob. Her and Bob used to go to the movies all the time, and they still go frequently here and there. But she kind of got it, and said, it's not really not. It's better to connect with each other and talk about our days and not have that distraction around. I don't know how I guess she found out it's pretty healthy too. Our kids really don't know much better, right? They'll see cartoons at grandma and grandpa's, but their life as they know it doesn't have a TV around them. So there's no rebellion yet. But, what has it done? I think that quantity over quality, we connect at home. We share each other's day. We have stories. We talk about food or this or that. And there's not an interruption or distraction, like our kids aren't half baked, man. They're not like these mashed potato heads being like, oh, okay, yeah, I got to get my fix, right? It's really bad, these games, this television, but it's kind of screwed me socially sometimes, I would think like something big happens, I'm kind of gauche and I don't really know about it. When I was invited to the White House, I know Kim Kardashian was there, and Peter, I thought she was checking me out, but it wasn't Kim Kardashian. I thought it was. It wasn't. So that at the Academy Awards, I was, at the governor's ball afterwards. We got nominated for the Oscars. So the governor's ball, everyone's there, man. Kobe was there, Mary J. We were hanging with everyone. It was really sweet. And I went up to a guy who I thought was Michael Douglas, and I said, Michael, I want you to check out this film, Knife Skills. It's a great film. We didn't win the Oscar, but it made it, and I hope you can check it out. And he was kind of smug about the whole thing. So I told the producer of the movie, I said, dude, this dick, man. I mean, I was trying to tell him about the film, and this guy Douglas, he goes, you idiot. He goes, that was Christopher Walken's. And I said, well, whatever. Let's go to the next one. You know what I mean? So like socially, it's kind of screwed me in some situations, but whatever. Like, I don't think that guy's losing sleep over it.
Do you let your kids play video games?
No.
Do they complain?
No, they ice skate, man. They'll be ice skating. They'll play with Legos. I mean, they'll do something other than that. But I mean, it's really not the pathway to someone being successful, I think, in their life. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And it very quickly
say it loud.
Tell us a little bit more, because we didn't delve into this, and we should have. Dave, you and I have been remiss. Yeah, you had an Oscar-nominated documentary.
Mm-hmm. That was a couple of years ago. That's old news now, but it's news nonetheless. It was 2018. Yeah, it was pretty sweet, man. I mean, the whole the movie took about 5-6 years to film, and then when released, I mean, the guy who did it had already won an Oscar. Utmost integrity. You don't find people like this often in this sort of business, right? the amount I've said no to Hollywood or other places just wanting to get their greasy palms on someone's hard luck is embarrassing, right? So there's a lot of bad people out there. This man was not one of them. He took his time. He did it with integrity. He displayed the difficulties behind second chances. And I think he got what he deserved. That's an Oscar nomination, man. It was really powerful. But to see that film is still good, I was, reluctant to believe that film could still be good. And it really is making some differences out there. It really is.
Well, I can tell you as an actor, I would love to have an Oscar nomination. So for me, you're having an Oscar nomination is a really big deal. You're now even more my hero and inspiration.
Yeah. Hey, Peter. So when the guy called me, I was in bed, and I was laying with my kid, and he calls me. He's like, he's got this English accent. He says, "Brandon, we did it. We've got the nomination. We're going to LA." I said, "Tom, that's great news." I said, it's amazing. Okay, well, just tell me what's going to happen next, right? And then my wife comes upstairs. She's like, this shit's got to go outside right now, and the dishes. I said, "Fuck." I said, "All right, I'll just get to work." I don't think I told her until a week or two later. I was like, just so you know, there's got this Oscar nomination. This and that.
Wow. Hey, but a family, kids and a wife do have a way of putting things quickly in perspective. You're a big dog, but only for about 30 seconds and in your own mind.
That's the truth. I mean, you know it, but you understand. Yeah.
You did it. What did she do when she finally heard you won an Oscar? You got an Oscar nomination.
She said the same thing everyone else said. "Can I get a ticket?" I don't know. I don't fucking know. I don't know. Let me ask. I mean, it's like I don't know. It's kind of funny, but yeah.
Well, you're one up. Peter and I are even when it comes to Oscar nominations.
Yeah.
And we all have the same number of Super Bowl rings as the Cleveland Browns.
And but our first guest between the two of them on our first episode had what, 9? How many rings? Super Bowl rings? Was it 7, 9, 5? It was a lot.
Yeah, we had a couple of guys that I'm friends with that are Sherman Smith, who went to 3 Super Bowls with the Seattle Seahawks, and Dylan McCullough, who a couple of Super Bowl rings with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're both coaches. So that was our first guest. So there you go.
All of our guests are living our dreams. They've realized our dreams of Super Bowl rings and Oscar nominations.
There you go.
Well, Brandon, what can I say? An hour is not long enough to chat with you, my friend, because we scratched the surface. I think we scratched it well, but there's certainly so much more that we would love to engage you in further conversation. But this has been an outstanding hour, and we apologize for some of the minor technical difficulties with the feedback and reverb, but I think your message is to come across quite strong in terms of who you are as a person, what motivates you, and clearly that you, as much as anybody I know in Northeast Ohio, is making a difference in people's lives in a meaningful, long-lasting way. I mean, you are, whether sung or unsung, you're a champion here in Northeast Ohio and in our nation. I wish there were more BCs, like more Brandon Chrostowski. So
you're way beyond Northeast Ohio. You're doing something that nobody else is doing. You're one of a kind, and a salute to you for all that you do for our community and the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a blast, man. This is good. We'll do it again sometime.
Why not?
We will do that.
Part 2.
We will do that.
DC part 2.
Thank you.
Okay.
Part 2.
Tell your family hi.
Part
Brandon.
2.
We'll do. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye now.
Take care. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in.